HarperCollins presents The Quiet Wife by Felicity York, read by Allie Croker. Author's note: the events in this story are inspired by real people and events. There was the suggestion of a scandal around Frances Leyland and James Whistler, and historians have analysed both Whistler's paintings and correspondence between the two. Both the way that he painted her and the familiarity and warmth in their correspondence hints at a closer relationship than that between artist and sitter. This work is a fictional account of what might have transpired between them had the rumours been true. Chapter 1. Speke Hall, Liverpool, 1871. Frances Leyland applied a thin scraping of butter to her tiny triangle of toast. She glanced at her husband of 18 years, who had just demolished a plate of sausage and eggs, and tried to recall the point in their marriage he'd insisted she eat more delicately. More politely, he'd termed it. Probably when his success at the shipyard meant a move to a lavish house and the requirement to entertain business associates. Somewhere around that time, he had also decided her wardrobe did not befit his newly elevated status. She chewed as delicately as she could, and wondered what happened to the man she married years earlier. Like most girls, she dreamed of meeting her prince and being swept off her feet. She surveyed Frederick again. It had been a long time since he'd behaved like her Prince Charming. A footman crept silently into the dining room and deposited fresh toast and tea. She smiled her thanks, but Frederick didn't look up from scowling at his paper. He was still a handsome man, although these days he hid most of his face behind a fulsome long beard that tapered to a point, and a lavish moustache, which was terribly fashionable for a gentleman of his status. His love of good tailoring and frilled shirts emphasized his tall, trim figure. She supposed he was still in his prime at 40. She recalled the early days of their marriage, when they had lived in a tiny, cramped house while he scrabbled his way up the ladder at the shipyard. Bibby and Son was the biggest shipping company in Liverpool, and he'd first been apprenticed there as a boy. At least they'd talked to each other back then. The newspaper rustled softly as he turned over the page. The quiet splendour of Speke Hall was a far cry from the early days of their union, yet here they were. In its glorious dining room, carved oak panels of deep walnut embellishing the walls, intricate floral motifs adorning the ivory ceiling overhead, soft lights spilling through its majestic windows framed by crimson curtains. Politely ignoring each other over the breakfast dishes, while Frances pretended she felt at home in such a grand house. She bit into another tiny piece of buttered toast and chewed methodically, whilst Frederick stared at his newspaper. Absently, he reached out for his teacup and lifted it to his lips without letting his eyes stray from the print. Frances cleared her throat. "Everything is ready for your guests, my dear." Clearly startled by this gentle intrusion, her husband blinked and looked at her as if surprised to see her there, before returning his gaze to his newspaper. "I should hope so. I must go out after breakfast, but I will be back in time to greet them." Frances nodded, unsurprised that her effort to engage in pleasantries had been rebuffed. He hesitated, then darted a glance at her. "Did I mention I bought another house in London? It's almost ready to move into." Frances put down her cup and dabbed at the corner of her mouth with her napkin to gather herself before speaking, so nothing of the shock of his announcement showed. She didn't have the energy for an argument, and Frederick could be so quick to temper. "How nice. Is this a house for you?" Just after they moved to Speke Hall, he had bought himself a large flat in Liverpool for when he worked long hours at the shipping company, a detail he had omitted to tell her. She wondered if he'd decided to do the same in London. "It's for the family." Frances nodded and chose her words carefully. "What will happen to the house that we currently reside in when we're in London?" she asked, thinking of their very grandiose property at Queensgate in Kensington. He shook out his newspaper, signalling the conversation was all but over. "I'll sell it." "Where is
Sample complete. Ready to continue?